If not, then yeah, I guess I'll just delete it as soon as we're done, or come back in and switch it off again.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
I will do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello. Oh, you're on mute.
We're just waiting for a few more people, I think, to join. Just give them a few more minutes and then we'll get going.
Okay.
Hello, we're just giving people 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll get going. think we'll probably start, just for the interest of time. We've got until 11:45 at the latest. So if everyone's all right to unmute themselves and stick their videos on. So I'll start off with a brief introduction. I'm Shabs Bobdiwala. I'm currently an obstetrics and gynecology registrar working with Prof Chung at Princess Anne Hospital. My PhD research interests previously were related to early pregnancy and ectopic pregnancy, and sort of my interests that go into the remit of engineering involve this decision support tool that we built to try and figure out a way to predict women who are likely to end up with an ectopic pregnancy, because that's what kills women in terms of early pregnancy related issues. And so that's my background. I'll be moderating today, but perhaps it'd be nice for us to just do a quick go around about who you are, what you do, and what you'd like to gain out of this session.
I'll go next because I think I'm probably the odd one out. So my name's Emily, and I work in the Office of Development and Alumni Relations. I'm the Senior Campaign Manager for the Next Big campaign for Southampton. The reason that I'm here and that I've snuck in is that we're prepping for the Next Big campaign and starting to try to understand what we will be fundraising for. The cornerstone of the fundraising campaign is likely to be the medical research facility that's going to be sited at the hospital, and the kind of point of differentiation that we'll be fundraising for is what happens when engineers and clinicians come together, and what kind of health problems can be solved by bringing those two areas to create solutions. So what's really interesting to us is to understand what those answers are, because that's what's going to interest our donors. So when we're saying we're fundraising for this building, we need to understand all of those problems, because that's what's going to resonate with our donors. So I'm just kind of in the background trying to understand everything that's going on, and it's incredibly interesting for me, very exciting.
I think certainly all three of us were very interested in engaging how our projects could interest you. But who'd like to go next? Harry, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so Harry Ackerman, anaesthetist, and so yeah, we're specifically working on this Capaciplex project, which James knows a bit about as well, which is a continuous respiratory rate monitor, and it's just a little sticker that's worn on the chest like an ECG dot, and it has some clever little bits of electronics that means that it can then talk to the cloud or to the smartphone or whatever. So we are interested not really in using it as an anaesthetist, because we have very good ways of measuring respiratory rate already, but in the sort of perioperative phase. So that would be in the recovery area perhaps, and then on the wards afterwards, and even when patients go home. But it's not just within medicine that this has applicability, because there's lots of other people who want to know respiratory rate. I'm thinking high performance athletes and things like that, or low performance athletes. They all like their sort of metrics and data to go onto Strava, and this would be a way that you could probably start to track general levels of fitness as well. But we also think that it may be useful for things like asthma or COPD, trying to predict when someone's becoming unwell. So I was quite interested in what Kate Farrar, I think her name was talking about earlier. Do you get subtle changes in how you breathe as you are becoming unwell? And could we then start predicting that up at an earlier stage? And I'm doing it with Neil White, who's just dropped into the room as well. So,
sorry, I came here looking. Has Niall Clark turned up at all?
No,
not yet.
No. Okay. I'll
Would
just
you
check on him?
Neil, we were just going round, just sort of saying hello and who we are and what we do and what we're hoping to get out of this session. So I think you follow in quite nicely from Harry. So you were just talking about the respiratory sensor work.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got some technology that hopefully could produce a really low cost solution for automated continuous measurement of respiration. And I think I just picked up on Harry saying that there could be some signatures in there that are indicative of other conditions that can get picked up early. Things like, well, one we were looking into as part of the project is sepsis, but there may well be others as well that there may be some signatures that come out of the data. So that's why we were keen on talking to some of our colleagues, perhaps that do work on AI and machine learning.
Perfect, thank you. James, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you all. So I'm James Badger. I'm Clinical Innovation Fellow and Research Fellow at the hospital. So relating to this sort of this breakout room, the Innovation Fellow, well, both roles are relevant, but the Innovation Fellow role in particular, essentially, we've sort of got a catalogue of sort of potential ideas that need development and a catalogue of clinical needs within the hospital that could have, they may have some commercial potential if developed in collaboration with industry. And we've also got examples of successful projects that have been commercialized in the past through clinicians collaborating with engineers in industry and academics, and so yeah, we've got that piece of work. So yeah, it's just yeah, I'm just hoping to sort of connect with other like-minded people who are interested in similar things. But yeah, nice to meet you all.
And then is it Duncan? Would you like to go next?
Yeah, hi, I'm Duncan Holmes. I'm actually a Royal Society Entrepreneur in Residence linked to the medical school. My role here is that Royal Society helped me to contribute to the work that's going on at the university, helping people think about translation, and in particular, from my experience linking with the pharmaceutical industry and undertaking anything around drug discovery. My background is I did my degree and PhD in chemistry here at Southampton, which is why I decided to come back for this role, but I then spent 30 years in the pharma industry working in early stage drug discovery, so I'm bringing some of that back here. And the last thing I did before I retired was I spent 9 years building collaborations with academics all across Europe, Australia and Canada in taking projects from really early target discovery all the way through to clinical evaluation. So just bringing some of that experience, and happy to help anybody in that type of field, really.
Brilliant, thank you. And John Robinson, hello.
Hello, I'm John Robinson. So I'm a co-lead of the research software group in ECS. So we have a team of talented research software engineers, and we work on a variety of projects across disciplines, across faculties. I'll give you a bit of my pitch, which I think is going to be a lightning talk later on. But basically, the thing that unites researchers across disciplines is the fact that either their output of their research is based on software, or it is software itself. I think 92% of people from a survey of the SSI conducted across academics said that they use it, and 56% develop their own, but very few actually have formal training. And this particularly can be a problem if you're looking to ensure accuracy and reproducibility and performance. And if you want to commercialize software. So increasingly what we do these days is work on impact acceleration bids to enable people to take their research and move it into the commercial realm by ensuring that their software is sort of robust and accurate and scalable. And we've had a bit of success. Radii Devices was one of them, where we helped considerably, and TopMD, which is a molecular phenotyping spin out, we wrote the minimum viable product for them, and they attracted investment. So I'm really looking to make some contacts today, people who need software engineers on tap, who understand the move from research to enterprise.
Perfect, thank you very much. Sorry, it just takes a while to find the microphone. And then we've got Ruth, who's just, I think, joined us. Ruth, we were just doing a brief round the table introduction. As new people come in, don't we? I'll do a little summary, so I have to remember what everyone does. But if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about what you do and the kind of links that you'd like to make from today's event.
Okay, I'm Ruth. So I'm the Impact Funding Manager at the university. So I manage the portfolio of impact acceleration accounts and the there's the concept account when we had it with the university. So I'm engaging with these sessions so that I can sort of hear what the clinicians and engineers are keen to work on as part of our development of our business plan going forward for our new application.
And do you work with Emily? Are you because we were talking about, Emily, your roles in fundraising too. So I'm sorry if I've missed the difference in the link. Or
we don't work together, but I was just thinking and making a note that perhaps we should be. I'll just recap for everyone. I'm quite new to my role. I only started in January, but I work in the Office of Development and Alumni Relations, which I really need to get better at saying. And I'm the Senior Campaign Manager for the next big campaign for Southampton, which is likely to be fundraising for the medical research facility that's due to be built on the hospital site. And what we need to understand for the fundraisers and for the campaign is what will the change be that comes out of that building, and by bringing engineers and clinicians together, what problems are we going to solve? Once we know that and have those answers, or some of them, then we can start speaking to our donors and exciting them, enthusing them, and getting them to open their wallets.
Yeah, I can catch up afterwards. Yeah.
perfect. And Harry and John, I don't know, is there some sort of interface in terms of, like, you developed this device, Harry, with the team that you've been working with? I don't know whether they've already been stepped into turning it into a bit more of a commercial enterprise in terms of developing into a product that becomes a commercial product.
So this is old technology. It's a new use of old technology, and so no one else is doing this for respiratory rate that we know of. We have published on it, but we're not aware that anyone else is doing it. But John sort of mentioned about 56% of people or something have a go at doing their own software, and that would be exactly where we're at. So we've got a very talented guy who's in this meeting somewhere called Maddie, who's doing a lot of signal processing stuff for us. He's a PhD student with Neil White, and sort of he, by nature of the fact he's what I would sort of call a bit of a sort of techno geeky guy, he knows how to code, and he's done a bit of an app, and you know, it all sort of looks okay, but it's not a sort of professionally done one. And you know, we do. I think in general, not specific to our idea, but I think in general, you know, lots of people have got lots of ideas, and the difficult thing is not the idea, but it's then how you sort of take the next few steps forward. And where we've had issues is in the relationship between the hospital and the university, and so it took a little while to get our ethics approved to be able to put these path vectors onto patients. It took a long time for the university and hospital to agree, and you know, it just makes it difficult. These are barriers. If this sort of collaboration thing needs to be successful, these need to be either broken down, or they need to be sort of forged now and formulated now, so that when people come along with future projects as well, they haven't got to hit these barriers all the time. Everyone just knows what the arrangement is. John, have you done some? I mean, it sounds like you might have done some sort of cross university and hospital stuff. Have you been doing some molecular biology? Have you've done some software for the hospital?
Actually, no. So I have recently been dragged into the I don't know how much I can say on this, the chill with saliva COVID testing lab software, but that was not we didn't enter into that voluntarily. No, we haven't collaborated with the hospital. We've done a bit for School of Medicine, as I mentioned, the top MD stuff. I would agree with you that there doesn't seem to be an institutional memory for collaborations between, well, the university and anywhere, if I'm perfectly honest, and getting, you know, NDAs and contracts signed up is a constant drain on time. So yeah, anything that can come out of this which would speed up that process, or have, you know, instigate some sort of institutional memory so people don't forget how to do these things, would be a fantastic outcome.
Can I just ask Neil, whilst he's come back in? Neil, we're just talking about the fact that it took us so long to sort of get the hospital and university to agree to terms and conditions, or intellectual property, or whatever you want to call it. Do you know where? Do you feel that if we were to do the whole thing again, there's been sufficient learning that would make that an easier process, or do you think it just goes back to sort of step one again?
Yeah, well, I think we know who the right people to talk to are now, which was important. But I think it is a slow process, and so I'm not sure that you know, if we had to do it all again, we could actually do it too much quicker. But I think the big learning curve from my point of view is knowing who to talk to. That was a real issue. You know, I think the support networking generally is actually very good. It's just that if you don't know the right people, it's hard to make progress.
So would it be useful as an outcome of this event for us to try to compile some sort of go-to list that clinicians and engineers could look at? So, you know, this person does this. And obviously it'd be difficult because people do lots of different things in terms of making it coherent and as concise as possible, but perhaps like some sort of directory, would that be useful? Or I don't know if it already exists and you find that it's not useful.
I would have thought that would be really useful.
Yeah, I think if it can be kept current. Sorry, Harry.
Sorry, yeah, I think it'd be very useful. I think it's word of mouth largely at the moment. So, sorry, John, you go.
Yeah, no, I agree with Harry and Neil. It is word of mouth, and I think we've all got our own little black book of people who we tap up because we know they get things done. And I feel very sorry for them. If they did their job a little bit worse, they'd probably have an easier life. The problem is, of course, that those people leave or move on, and then you lose your contacts.
Yeah, John, I think this is a very pertinent question that we're discussing, and it is not unknown. So I think centrally the university is trying to, for a while, trying to resolve some of the bottlenecks. And part of the solution is to bring in new systems to manage you know, the relationships, etc., etc. But bringing in new systems is a challenge on its own. So since I've been Associate Dean for Medicine for the last 18 months, that's an ongoing discussion. So I think the shorter way is to understand the network, which is why these type of events are very useful. And then you know, navigate your way, know people and contacts, and that's, I think, how potentially things get a little quicker. But a lot of these contractual stuff, it does take a while, albeit that sometimes this takes too long. I agree, totally. Share your sentiments and pain.
James, you've had your raised hand up very politely. Did you want to contribute something?
Oh, yeah. So I was just interested to add in from the clinical innovation sort of commercialization sort of angle that I think going back to having engineers at the hospital is I think is exactly what we need. So I believe that every healthcare professional understands and knows where the gaps are in and where the clinical need is. But we're not trained in engineering, and we don't necessarily know what the solution is. So hence why this sort of thing is a really good idea. So I think it's really good on that level. And I think if you involve clinicians in that early stage development of ideas and assessment of clinical need, then it has potential to massively de-risk the project down the line. So a good example would be Harry and Neil's work, where Harry's able to see, yes, there's a need for a respiratory rate sensor. It's one of the most reliable predictors of deterioration in the hospital, but it's really unreliably measured at the moment. So it's essentially a nurse standing at the end of the bed and guessing what the patient's respiratory rate is. So that's an example of where there's a clinical need and there's an engineering solution that have been brought together. And that means that it's much more likely to be commercially successful. Because from a very early stage, there's a definite need, and so it's much more likely to be adopted down the line. I mean, Southampton, I think, is the ideal place to do it because we've got, I think it serves over 3.7 million people, and there's an unusually sort of large range of healthcare knowledge across the subspecialties. Yeah, I think it's sort of a very good thing to be doing, and to sort of add to that, there's also a very clear translational funding gap between having an idea or a concept and turning that into a reality. So, for instance, if there's some ideas that I'm aware of where the clinicians come up with a great idea on paper, it looks really good, but there is very little in the way of funding to support them work with engineers to develop a prototype that they can then test. And I think the reason is it's just very risky. that's the highest risk, but also the highest reward point of the whole process. So if it was able to be sort of formalised in and have engineers in the hospital who are working together to come up with these innovative ideas, that I think that's sort of the way transformation happens. It's sort of somebody needs to get in there and take that risk. So that's just my view from working as the innovation fellow for the last year or so, that there's a very clear need for this, but there are very clear gaps as well.
James, you mentioned this funding gap. Perhaps Prof Chung could provide a bit of insight as well. But I know previously so Southampton Hospital used to have this innovation fund. I think it was a maximum of £100,000 per application if you were successful that you could get. And they had applications just before COVID hit. And then there was obviously deathly silence about any money being given out once COVID hit, because that's where all the finances were going to. And when I used to previously work in London, I know Clark, so there's a Clark Wessex, but Clark Northwest London previously also specifically had funding for translational projects about getting an idea and turning it into real-time influence in terms of patient care. So I don't know if anyone else knows very much more about this in terms of that funding gap and where we are going to be post-COVID.
Just to say that I've worked on a couple of Clark projects, including Genie, which was quite a successful translation of something from research into a sort of community interventions for people. I think the Wessex Clark is now finished. I think there is something which is its successor, but I'm not quite sure if it has the same model.
Yeah, I think they're called ARCs now, but sorry, Prof, you were going to say something. Prof Chung.
No, just to say that it is a bit of a sort of a gap, in terms of when you're trying to get your concept into a prototype before it can be commercialized. There is a gap there, and it really depends on how. So the important thing about it having a clinical need is very important, because otherwise it's very hard to get the funding from a medical side or the engineering side. And one way we started off our sensor device with Hiram Morgan was through students. So we had 2 student projects before it actually got caught the attention of investors. So so it does take a while to actually get going. So that's where the funding comes in. It's small project, clinical trial, and that's how you can start. It's one of the ways. And on the way, we had some pharmaceutical help, so some pharmaceutical companies / funds. But that's usually how people start the first little step. It's very unusual to get a huge chunk of money, to do a project with no prototype. The other type of NIHR grants will be things that Neil and others will know. I4I grants, for example, NIHR funds, but that will have 2 types of stages. One is the development stage, and the other one is a further, obviously, past the development stage with trials and things. So that's probably worth also looking at. But the initial step is hard. So you have to have perseverance and bravery.
Yeah, well, thanks. And that's what we're finding. It's that initial step. Once you've got a prototype, once you've got something you can kick, then funders start to be more interested. But it's having to come up with something that you can kick.
We've had someone join us. Is it Nicola? Hello, morning. We were just sort of going around saying what it is that we all do, what our interests are, and what we're hoping to get out of in terms of this networking event. Do you mind just introducing yourself to the crew?
There we go. That works better. I'm a specialist in failure investigation. You'd think I would have noticed the mic wasn't on. Yeah, I've just come from the smart materials area, mainly because I work in materials, but not necessarily really smart. So I thought I'd come join this group. So I'm head of an enterprise group or enterprise unit in Faculty of Engineering and Physical Sciences. So I'm not a researcher, I'm not a clinician, I'm not an academic. I'm that other one that the university has, with those 3 pillars of enterprise, teaching, and research. So what we do is we solve industry's problems directly, and we tend to work on industrial grants as well, like Innovate. So we're quite good at winning some Innovate grants. They're run by industry and then we support them. But we generally have, when people have a problem with a material, so either a failure investigation. So for example, I do work with AIB and materials, things like that, where things fall out of the sky. But also we've been helped some healthcare units where they had orthopedics that have come out of people and they failed in the body and they wanted somebody to assess that, you know, why did something fail? So I'm not a medical doctor in terms of being able to diagnose a patient, but I can diagnose a broken thing in that I'm very good at fractography and all of that. Our unit can understand how something broke. And there's lots of calls for that. But in terms of being able to support the clinicians, we're staff who are available at the drop of a hat to work on things. So we have access to lots of materials testing rigs that can pull materials, push materials, rub them, work out friction, erode them, cavitate them, basically do nasty environments to materials to see how they behave. But we've also got the analytical equipment to then give metrics to that. How far is that material degraded? How big is the damage? How rough has it become? We've done some work before in hospitals where we've looked at the roughnesses of surfaces and linked that back to transfer of microbes and stuff that can live on those surfaces. So should you really have door handles that are brushed finished, or should they be polished finish? Or should they have some other finish? And we discovered that it was actually not perfectly polished, it was just a little bit slight, less than that, which was quite an interesting study. But obviously we're not experts in microbes, but we are experts in surface science. So we were able to measure those surfaces, and it's just simple things like that. But it's how we can support others who want to move forward with any work, not being beholden to doing teaching or in a long 2-year research project. We're available within a week or so to start working on people's projects, assuming there is funding. If there isn't funding, then maybe we can sort out something where we're supporting work that we can comes under our impact and outreach and reputational requirements, which is also what I'm trying to do. So as a unit, I have to bring in enough money to cover my salary staff, but I also have to demonstrate impact and reputation for the university. So if we can work on something that's going to do that, then happy to do that at almost cost or less than cost to help you guys if we're going to make a big difference in the world, because that's the whole point of the university, really.
And Nicola, in terms of resources, so do you have a certain number of undergraduate students that, for example, that you could give out? Or?
These are all consultants. So these are people who got their doctorates 10, 20 years ago. So they're all experts. So instead of a project taking a year with a student to get up to speed, it's short and sharp. And that's what industry is paying for. They're not paying for a student to work on something. They're paying for an expert to work on something. So we're all level 6, level 5 members of staff. We do have some technicians as well to help us get when we're doing a lot of bulk work. But it's the expertise and the high level that we're already at that you'll be working with. And that's what industry are paying for. That it's high cost to them, but short turnarounds. So you're not waiting for a student to get up to speed.
Great, thank you very much. We've had a few more people attending. You've got the videos off, but I just, not to pick on you, please don't feel picked on. But I think we've got Francis. Francis, would you like to just join the group in terms of, we're just going over what it is that we do. So just talk about what you do and what you're hoping to gain from this event.
Hi, I'm attending this event out of interest and at the sort of discussion with Harry Ackerman, who's one of our consultants, and we've chatted a little bit about his work, which is super interesting. I'm one of the academic clinical fellows in anesthesia. I work with James Badger a little bit as well, and I'm doing some perioperative risk work. I joined this mostly for interest, to see what was going on and to kind of, that's probably more or less what it is, just because I was curious and interested to learn more about it. And I don't know if I'll get involved or what will happen, but I'd love to at some point. So
yeah, getting great representation from the anaesthetic team in this session. We've got Romeo. Romeo, would you like to switch on your video, if that's all right? Just let us know what it is that you do and and how you'd like to benefit from this event. Maybe gone to get a coffee. Don't worry, Romeo. Who else have we had? I think we've covered Lindsay, you're administrating. I'd quite like to pitch in about, maybe John, this is one for you, just about the kind of work that I was involved in. Essentially, John, are you there? Hello, yes, sorry. In terms of, to cut a very long story short, essentially, ectopic pregnancy is when the pregnancy is in the wrong place, generally in the tube, and the problem is the tube can burst and cause massive hemorrhage, and the woman can die. So it's a real focus in terms of trying to figure out which women in early pregnancy are going to end up with an ectopic pregnancy versus which one aren't. And it's not as easy as you think it's going to be. And often we do lots of blood tests on women to try and figure out what's going on, but the way that people interpret these blood tests is incredibly variable. So you're already seeing the problem here. So my PhD involved essentially trying to find an evidence way of interpreting these blood test results. And we built this logistic regression model. And then we've got an app and a website and things like that. And we've done, in terms of the clinical side of it, we've done development studies, validation studies, multi-center validation studies, and it's in incorporated into some new guidance. So there is some national adoption, but the problem is trying to find a user-friendly interface that then people can use. Because at the moment, what we were doing was this model, the formula was embedded into an Excel spreadsheet. This is how noddy we were. We're doing this big study, but it's embedded into an Excel spreadsheet. And so initially, I had looked into doing getting some funding. That now it seems no longer exists because of COVID, to try and make this happen. But is that something that your team would be interested in, or is this something very far removed from what you do?
No, that's exactly it, really. It's that sort of taking it from the algorithm or the crude implementation of the algorithm into something which can be used but in production, whatever that is, whether it's in a clinic or if it's an app or something which a piece of software which is licensed on a per user basis. Yes, in terms of how to attract funding for that, I think I'm not entirely sure, but technically absolutely, that's precisely the kind of work we're in. Let's have a chat.
Yes, definitely. Sounds good. Thank you. Ruth and Emily, I just wanted to, obviously, because you're here just to glean the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Is this helpful to you? Is there anything else that you wanted to ask that you can then take back to your donors that would be useful to you?
The next steps for me are that we're hoping to have some more kind of smaller focus groups with academic colleagues that have been identified in engineering medicine. So I think this is just kind of helping to shape my thinking. I'm very, very new to the role. So no, this is just providing a really helpful overview for me. Thank you.
Yeah, me too. It's just really to see who's engaging with these types of opportunities and to hear what the sense is about what's important going forward. So it's been really helpful to pop into a couple of these meetings and to listen to what else is going on about what's, the academics and the clinicians and the medical people are actually trying to take forward over the next, 1 to 5 years possibly. It's really helpful. Thank you.
I hate to cut this short, but it is time for us to go back to the main meeting. I've popped the main meeting link into the chat of this breakout room. If you don't mind just switching over to that. Sorry, y'all were having a really excellent conversation. I feel really bad. And Shabs, you were amazing. Thank you so much for ended up running the room instead of just moderating it. But you've been brilliant. Thank you.
Pleasure. See everyone in the main room.
I'll be in touch, Adam, okay?
Yeah, thank you, John.